Blah blah. Oh.
Hey, look who it is. My beautiful audience once again. Are you guys all in a singing mood today? I know I sure am. Welcome to another episode of Pop Talk, everybody. I'm your host, Cody MacDonald, and today I'm joined by a certain somebody, the second half of the So to Speak family, Evan Mead. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's kind of nice to, kind of be like the co-founder of the network and to be a guest on the new branch show. It's actually cool. This isn't a performance evaluation, by the way. I am just your guest, and I'm happy to chat today. It's gonna be fun.
I need to impress the boss, so I need to do my absolute best today.
Yeah.
My career is on the line right now of podcasting, so I have to please. I got news from everybody as you were coming in, like Mr. Mead is here. Mr. Mead is here. Oh shit! Everybody, put on your happy faces.
The boss is coming. Look busy.
The boss is
Yeah.
coming. Look busy. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we happen to be recording on what's probably going to be on record the hottest day in June.
Hottest day in June's history, like as in recorded history, or
I think in recorded history, I read something about that, but there was a heat warning for today. It's going to get up to 40, which is kind of extreme considering already the hot days we've been experiencing so far this summer. So I'm not looking forward to that.
well, with the what's also a bit of a drawback to that is we're supposed to get like monsoon level rain for the rest of this week. Like it's just gonna rain in perpetuity from now until I think Friday. But that's because, and that's what happens when you've got like extremely hot air mixed with an extremely cold air. It's yeah, no, you can't have it be that hot for like a long period of time and just have no like weather repercussions. And also climate change is you gotta take notice of it, guys.
Exactly.
All the stuff you've talked about thus far on the show, they're all you talk about, staples of pop culture like Jaws and the Truman Show. I would very much consider to be a part of pop culture, and I think it's really cool that your show's called Pop Talk and you talk about popular stuff that was popular. I just kind of had a thought about that title.
I guess I never really thought of it that way. It's almost like a double meaning.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the things you could do as a suggestion is maybe dedicate like the 10th episode, give it the season finale or the 10th episode, if you will, a theme and dedicate it to like commercials, like popular commercials that were all the. Because you remember how, I'm not saying you have to make it exactly like him, of course, have your own style, but do you remember when the Nostalgia Critic did those commercial videos? And to me, even when his content took a dip in quality, those commercial videos were the best the best content he was producing.
oh yeah, I agree. Those episodes are highly entertaining, even though I haven't really watched them all that much in the past, like probably year and a half. I kind of just stopped. I was just getting kind of sick of his content. I always sort of tune in on his commercials, and I notice that he always releases them every November. So that's kind of always something to look forward to every year.
Yeah.
Because it's true, commercials are almost like a completely different medium and has some sort of entertainment value to them. And especially with him going all the way back to like the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, there's a lot of commercials that bring back memories.
Yeah, that's very true. Do you find that with each decade or with each part of a decade, the tone of commercials kind of shifted? Like commercials in the 80s were very different from commercials in the 90s, and then the 2000s had their own type of commercial. And then in the 2010s, the TV commercial is still a thing, but then YouTube ads became their own thing.
Yeah, YouTube ads are kind of the new norm when it comes to advertisement. I haven't really tuned in that much on just regular cable or satellite television in the past while. Anytime I'm home with my parents, they always have the TV on, and then I'll just be like, wow, really not much has changed in terms of presentation when it comes to commercials. Because I remember back then when like my family used to like tape a lot of things on VHS, and sometimes they would keep in commercials. And for instance, Crest toothpaste has always been the exact same ever since we're a kid. The way
Yep.
that they always advertise it is just like, here's your old toothpaste, now try the Crest one. It removes 50% more plaque. And then same with like dusting stuff, like dusting products. It's like, you're used to dusting things like this where it doesn't take a lot of the dust off of your counters. Now try the new Swiffer thing where it still takes the same amount like it's always been in the past 20 years.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about, going back home and watching TV at your parents' place, because I don't know about you, but I take it you don't own a cable box. Yeah, the roommate and I don't own a cable box in our place either. But my mom has not had basic cable in, I think, almost a decade. Yeah, she got rid of it like right around the time I graduated high school and started going to college, and I wasn't home to watch TV like in the evenings anymore. And a lot of people are doing the same. People are canceling just their basic cable packages. No, it's no wonder they say television is dying.
Well, I don't think television is dying in the sense where I think primetime television will still strive enough because kind of older generations prefer to have that on, whether it's the news or if it's The Price is Right or something like that. But I think in this day and age with streaming, it's definitely shifted the focus a lot more. With cable television, yeah, I don't see that surviving that much unless they're just doing reruns. I think the last time I tuned in on Much Music, it was nothing but just shows that were originally premiered in the early 2000s to late 2000s. So
Yeah.
I think as long as they strive on reruns, and plus there's like channels that are devoted to reruns. Like I remember TBS, and now I think it's called Peachtree TV. They show nothing but rerun episodes of like Seinfeld, Family Guy, King of the Hill, and it must have an audience. But now, again, today with streaming services, it's like you have those shows on some sort of platform. So I don't know. As long as there's an audience for it, just keep it going.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, there's as long as there is an audience, yeah, people are still gonna watch it. And I feel like rerun services, like not like streaming services and channels dedicated entirely to reruns, would be all the rage these days, because our society is obsessed with nostalgia, which there's a charm to that, but you and I talk about this when we talk about the fate of the film industry. The Hollywood that we grew up idolizing when we were kids is today terrified to take on new ideas, because the most anticipated movies that you'll see come out any given year are not original ideas. Very few of them are.
I always say, as long as it's a good idea, awaiting for some sort of potential sequel, even if it takes years later, as long as there's a good idea in store, then so be it. But if it's just, oh, what else is at the bottom of the barrel of our Hollywood ideas? You know? All right, Mr. Mead,
Right. So,
shall we get down to
to
business
defeat the Hun,
and dive in? Mulan.
nice. I like the sound of that.
Just as a little introduction, you are avid of Disney, and especially the Disney's Renaissance era that we grew up with. And yeah, we want to talk about one of our favorite ones from that era, which was Mulan from 1998, directed by Tony Bancroft and Barry Cook. It's two directors. This is the first animated film from Disney where it centers around an Asian character named Mulan, who's based on the Chinese mythical tale of she's a girl that took her father's place in the war. She chopped off her hair, pretended to be a boy, joined the army so that her elderly father doesn't end up killing himself. And along the way, she not only gains honor for her family and her country, but ultimately herself.
Yeah, that's a beautiful description of it. To kind of paint a picture of like what the Renaissance era was looking like in the mid '90s, because in the late '90s, because everyone has different opinions on it. But let me just, if I may, just give a little recap. So, in it started the Renaissance era lasted for 10 years, starting in 1989 with the Little Mermaid, and it ended officially with Tarzan in 1999. It was initially supposed to end with a movie released in 2000 called Kingdom of the Sun, or Kingdom Under the Sun, which was supposed to be an epic recreation of The Prince and the Pauper set in the Incan Empire. But that idea ultimately fell through and became what we know today as the Emperor's New Groove. So when I talk about and listen to other film and Disney connoisseurs talk about the Disney Renaissance era, the opinions are at it. The Renaissance era, believe it or not, is not universally praised. Like not every film in this era gets the same praise. So I'll give you an example. Pocahontas came out the year after The Lion King, and it did not receive this. It got praise. It got modest praise from critics, and audiences were a little mixed. But the reception and the box office earnings just weren't the same as The Lion King.
And did you know that Disney was putting all of their money and bets on Pocahontas being a success, and they were kind of fearing that The Lion King would be a failure?
I find that so ironic. That's like one of the biggest
Yeah.
ironies in. Well, actually, another fun tidbit: Smokey in 1997, Smokey and the Bandit is scheduled by 20th Century Fox to come out the same weekend as Star Wars, and guess which movie Fox thought was going to be the big money pooler and bring in all the cash that weekend?
It's also like when Will Smith said, "I'm gonna pass on this little movie that's coming out called The Matrix. Wild Wild West is where it's
Yeah.
at." Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so
sorry, go on.
what happened, so then I'm very aware that well, not only was The Lion King like considered a B project, the animation studio that they were drawing the movie at in California got destroyed by an earthquake. So they actually kind of had to salvage part of the movie and redo parts of it just so it could be ready on time.
To go back to your point actually about just the Renaissance, like I would actually say that the first half of the Disney's Renaissance had a nice consistent streak. And when you say that it, broke down and started to falter in quality after that, I would actually say it went in a very highs and lows. Kind of not so good, then pretty good, then not so good, then
Yeah.
pretty good.
Um
Until
because
yeah.
after Pocahontas came and went in retrospect, Hunchback of Notre Dame kind of won audiences back over, and they thought, okay, the Renaissance still stands. Then in 1997, Hercules was released, and I don't. Here's the thing: I don't consider Hercules to be a bad movie.
Oh yeah, I don't, and I don't mind all these movies you've been naming. I kind of don't mind, even if it's Pocahontas. I am a very big sucker just for animation, even if the story doesn't grab me. I just appreciate animation so much as a
Yeah,
medium. I find I watched all these a lot growing up. Not maybe not actually, ironically, not so much the Beauty and the Beast. Believe it or not, I did not see that movie for the very first time until I was a teenager. It just was it wasn't this is how I always say it, it wasn't available. Like my parents just didn't have it on
yeah.
VHS. They didn't pick it up.
Uh, just not only was Beauty and the Beast not available to me, I didn't see Beauty and the Beast until I was 22. So I kind of have,
Okay,
yeah,
good. So I'm not the
no, you're
only
not the
crazy
only
person.
one. Um, Beauty and the Beast is one of those movies that comes close to being perfect.
I know one perfect
What's
Disney
the perfect
movie.
Disney movie?
Song of the South.
Okay, that's it. Dishonor on your whole podcast. Hey, Lyle, make a note of this. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on
Yeah.
Cody's cow. Yeah.
Wait, did you say that the Renaissance ended with Tarzan? I actually thought it was Treasure Planet.
Oh
It
no,
went to the little bit of the
no.
early 2000s.
The Disney Renaissance era officially ended with Tarzan. The reason why, because they wanted to end it with what Emperor's New Groove was supposed to be, because the idea of the Renaissance era was they took classic fables and classic legends and turned them into these multi-million-dollar animation epics.
Okay, so at least Tarzan ended the whole era then with a nice
Yeah,
note. I'll say that at least. But today we're talking about the one film that I feel like has resonated with you and I in a very interesting way growing up, because I think out of the small talks that you and I have had, it's why I'm really excited to be talking about this movie, is that I think we both love this movie since it became a now more respected classic than it was initially. Because I think back then people just were like, yeah, Mulan is good, just not up there with like the greats like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast.
yeah.
But in the early 2000s and close to almost, or the late 2000s and close to like the early 2010s, I see a little shift of focus on Mulan, and it actually gained a lot more of an appreciation now after being reevaluated. And I think you and I and part of a lot of other fans that were really into this movie as a kid sort of go, ah, finally, everybody else sees what we saw as a kid.
Yeah. So do you feel like our I kind of like that approach because it feels like our opinions were kind of ahead of the curve, like at the time.
And not not to gloat, but it kind of feels that way. So to kind of go into a little bit, when did you first watch this movie, and what were your first thoughts, if you can remember as far back?
Oh, that is an excellent question. Well, first of all, I want to kind of paint a picture of what me as a boy growing up in the late '90s was like. So, I'm a child of the year 1992, and I like a lot of '90s babies. I was raised on Disney classics. Although I knew the Disney princesses existed, but the only Disney princess that I had seen as a young kid growing up in the '90s was Jasmine in Aladdin. And for years, I didn't really ask why that was, but when I was a teenager, like when I was just graduating high school, my mom actually explained why that was. It turns out that my mom did not want my brother or I to watch the Disney movies that where princesses were the main characters, because if you look at something like Cinderella, the Disney princesses, they spend a lot of time cooking and cleaning, and my mom thought that that was a dated portrayal of a princess. Even with Snow White, like I actually didn't see Snow White until I was a little older to understand the concept of gender roles. The only Disney princesses that slipped through the cracks in my mom's in my mom's exposure was Snow White, but if I was a little older when I saw that, Snow White, Jasmine, and Ariel. But I never saw Pocahontas, I never saw Cinderella, and I never saw Sleeping Beauty. I didn't see Sleeping Beauty until I was in my 20s either. But anyways, so I wanted to bring this up because when Mulan came around, that was totally fine for me to watch. Mulan came out in a time in my life where I hate, even though like it's ironic, like because I love going to movie theaters and I miss going to movie theaters. Um, I hated going to movie theaters when I was a kid because I'm on the autism spectrum, and '97 is the year I was officially diagnosed. So going to a movie theater up until a certain age was scary for me because sensory overload, loud noises. Not to say that I didn't have some good moments in a movie theater. The first movie I ever saw was The Lion King, and I have very, very vague.
Oh
Okay,
man,
I
that's awesome.
I was 2 when I saw The Lion King in the theater, and I have very vague memories of feeling my seat vibrate as Circle of Life is playing, and I remember seeing Simba held up over the crevice of Pride Rock, just having the whole kingdom bow to him. That and my mom has told me that when she looked over at my face when that scene was playing, she according to her, I was just like my eyes were my
Transfixed.
transfixed. My eyes were apparently glued to the
Wow.
screen, and my jaw was on the floor. I didn't blink for maybe a good minute, and then
I love that. I love hearing stories
yeah.
like that.
So movies were scary for me. The only other movie that I remember seeing before 1998 was Toy Story, and I will never forget the only image I remember seeing of Toy Story in the theater was Woody's big face reveal where he goes, "Reach for the sky." That's another image in my mind that I will always remember. And I remember seeing it on the VHS, and I'm like, wow, like I remember seeing that in the theater. So but anyways, I didn't go to movie theaters hardly ever until 1998. And my parents asked me if I want to go see Mulan. They told me what the story was, and I said no thanks. Not because the story did and by the way, the story didn't even sound that interesting. My mom said it's about a girl who goes to fight in an army. I'm like, no thanks. It didn't sound that interesting. Throughout the summer, I just kind of did other things. I watched other movies. Peter Pan was re-released on VHS that summer, and my dad got it for me. And then I remember seeing a teaser trailer for Mulan, and it looked really cool. Do you remember the first teaser trailer, Cody, for Mulan, where it shows footage of her getting into her armor and it has the Emperor's voiceover.
Yeah. It had half of the animation and it had half of the drawn animation in the early
Yeah.
stages.
So Mulan was a movie that now that I look back on it, I wish I could have experienced Mulan in the theater. But I know that my 6-year-old ass would have been like scared because the first time I saw Mulan, it was actually my dad took my brother and I on a Christmas retreat in 1998 up to this resort up in Cottage Country. And one of the early Christmas presents we were allowed to open that year was a VHS copy of Mulan. And we watched it at the resort. And I remember seeing it for the first time. And it was funny. It was epic. It was not only was it one of the first like war movies I ever saw, it was a game changer for Disney because that was the first time Disney had openly portrayed actual warfare scene in an actual one of their movies. And I remember in previous as I watched older Disney classics, if ever there was a war, they talked about it in passing, but they never showed it. And there was a reason for that because
Yeah.
they didn't. So Mulan was a big, psychological experiment when it came to portraying war on screen. And the moment the war became real for me in Mulan was when they're singing "A Girl Worth Fighting For." The song cuts mid sentence, and they see a burned down village. They show bodies of fallen soldiers off in the distance. When I watched it grow as an adult years later, I'm like, oh my god, those are bodies out on the battlefield. A massacre went
Yeah,
down here.
we'll get into it definitely, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of these examples that this film was kind of ahead of its time in terms of how it portrayed warfare and death, and that's a great example on how this film's tone is so on point and perfect on how it balances seriousness and humor at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a serious scene that feels like it's undercut by comedy, and there's not any comedy scenes that are undercut by anything dramatic. But that scene in particular is where it's sort of like a punch in the gut, where it catches your attention.
Yeah.
A song cutting out mid-sentence to show reality, and that's the last song that is performed in the film. And the film becomes a lot more serious from that point out, with a couple of little sprinkles of comedy here and there, but you're so used to Disney films having a song every 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is one movie where I think the last third of the film doesn't have that. It's just nothing but Jerry Goldsmith's beautiful
Oh
score.
yeah. I feel like an asshole, but as someone who claims to collect movie soundtracks, I have yet to get my hands on the Mulan soundtrack, so I gotta get my hands on the score.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, yeah,
It's also epic as hell too.
for
So
sure. So the first time I saw this film in 1998, similar with you, after watching a lot of VHS previews of Mulan before these films and seeing that this film is coming out in the summer of 98. I think it was the summer, right? Of
it came
98.
out, yeah, in June of 1998. Yes.
Oh, so it would have been a birthday present
Yeah.
actually, because my birthday's in June. So my mom said, "Yeah, you can go see Mulan. We'll definitely go see Mulan. I think it looks good. I think yeah." And I was excited to see it. It looked interesting. She's like, "However, you need to clean your room." And for some reason that day I wasn't feeling it. And kids, they want to clean their room. I put up a huge fight. We had this huge argument. She said, "You know what? If you're not going to do what you're told," she stuck to her guns. She's just like fucking Homer from that Itchy and Scratchy movie episode. She's like, "You cannot see that movie in the theater."
Damn.
I missed out on the most, probably would have been one of the most cinematic experiences of my life. I hate the fact that I now this kind of ties into my favorite moment in the movie. Actually, it's a kind of a cross between two favorite moments from the movie. I missed out on seeing Mulan's decision and transformation scene, cutting off her hair, getting the armor. That would have been a cinematic moment, and especially that moment where the Huns were at the top of the mountain and seeing that huge wide shot, and you're just hearing like this gust of like a crowd of like a in the distance. It gives me goosebumps, and it makes the hair on the back of my neck still stand up to this day. And then watching them all charge down the mountain, it's just epic looking. Like, and the fact that because I was a little stupid kid who didn't do what he was told, I missed out on two of my would have later on would have been my favorite moments. And then yeah, eventually my mom just got it for me on VHS and I watched it endlessly because this was around a time where I said, "Wow, so no matter where you are living in the world, even if you're living in a different culture, you can still have the same type of story as Luke Skywalker." I remember saying that as a kid, not knowing what the hero's journey was until I was a lot older, understanding that Joseph Campbell philosophy on like,
Yeah, yeah.
I've mentioned it before about the hero's journey. So it was an eye-opening kind of like thing, and the fact that like it's up there with The Lion King of being like so epic and so it's not a romance movie. I'm so tired of Disney movies relying on romance. It's like there's some good ones, but like I like the kind of hero's journey. I like something more personally driven. I like things that feel a little bit cinematic, and Mulan has that towards it. I love and some of my favorite movies that I loved watching growing up had that perfect balance of taking itself seriously but still having fun with itself and having a nice sense of humor in it. And that was Mulan just in a nutshell. What was your favorite moment in the
Oh,
movie?
favorite moment in the movie. I have several. Like, definitely Mulan's decision scene, is one of my favorites. I
Yeah,
love
it's
this. I love
amazing.
the score.
Yeah.
I love the score. I love the way that her reflection is like crystal clear in the sword as she pulls it out of the sheath. And
Oh, I love it.
yeah, another one of my favorite movies. I'm gonna sound cheesy, but I like the whole song sequence to "I'll Make a Man Out of You." One of the reasons, like I liked humming along to it when I was a kid because it was a catchy song. And I don't know what it was about TV sets in the '90s, but audio wasn't always clear, and movies aren't, and subtitles were not very accessible. So there were some stuff that I would hear, but it wouldn't register for me. And you know how in the lyric there's a background lyric with a choir saying "Be a man." When I heard that, I didn't hear "Be a man." I heard Peter Pan. I'm like, what the fuck?
That's good. That's funny. I can hear. Yeah, yeah. I can. Yeah. I also had a weird sort of hearing. I don't know. Maybe it was just tons of wax build up in my ears. But like, even if it's a movie that I watched today that I saw numerous times as a kid when I was having a bit of hearing issues, I hear what I thought back then, what I was hearing back
Yeah.
then. So that's funny. Well, that actually ties into the next question that you kind of just answered. Your favorite song. I would agree. Also, "I'll Make a Man Out of You, Be a Man" is not only a really great triumphant song, but the whole sequence from the second the song starts and from the time that it ends, just Mulan has a really great arc on terms of just to try to prove her worthy enough, and it's
Yeah.
satisfying. It's very
Yeah,
satisfying.
it's one of the best examples I can think of when it because the cool thing about Disney musicals is that the songs are a vehicle for not just musical performance but visual storytelling as well. It's one of the few Disney songs where a character completely changes by and the circumstances completely changes by the end of the song.
All right. What is that sound I hear? Trivia, pop quiz time.
Nice. What do you got for me today?
Well, question. Well, I tried to actually avoid a lot of finish this line of dialogue because I know you have this movie memorized verbatim,
Okay,
knowing you.
fair enough.
So I tried to avoid those, including Sean Yu. How many Huns survived the avalanche?
Uh, I'm
Yeah,
gonna say four Huns, including Shan Yu, survive.
it was 6 Huns, including Sean
Oh,
Yu.
that's right. Yeah, no, yeah, that was a
6 Huns, including Sean Yu.
yeah. So technically, I flubbed the number there. So yeah.
Defeated, yeah. Gotta keep it G rated or at least PG.
Do you? I actually I have a bit of trivia for you. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna let you do the trivia, but I do have a fun fact about. I know the very thing that got this movie a PG rating as opposed to the G ratings from the other Renaissance classics.
You know what? Can I actually guess on what it is?
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
It wasn't it when Mulan started bleeding from her wound?
Not that one. You'd think so, but no. Apparently, this is going to really make you question the rating system in America. But according to the trivia page I read on IMDb, The one thing that got Mulan a PG rating, it was the line. Remember when the ancestors are having their council, and then one elderly ancestor screams, "No, your great granddaughter had to be a cross-dresser." The word cross-dresser, that was the first time it had ever been spoken in a Disney film, and that word got the
Wow.
movie that
Really?
that word alone got the movie a PG rating. Then again, it was a
Wow.
different time back then.
I know, but that's again. I think Simpsons made fun of this, where I think Krusty the Clown said
Yeah.
something along the lines of, "Remember, kids, it's okay to show violence as long as you're not showing a nipple."
The very next year, South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut came into theaters, and
Oh, totally went to town on
yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah,
Kyle's mom says the
yeah, yeah.
same. Kyle's mom, Sheila Barfowski, says the same thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so your next question is,
Yeah.
what's scarier than the Undertaker?
We are meeting our matchmaker.
Yes. All right, next question is, what famous piece of art is referenced during the ancestor scene when the elderly couple was concerned about losing their farm?
Uh, American Gothic, correct?
Yep,
I like. Oh,
yep.
so that. Oh, I thought it's either American Goth or American Gothic, but now I remember.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yeah, that was a nice
Oh yeah.
touch. Yeah. Next question. Leah Salonga did the singing voice of Mulan. What other Disney heroine did she provide her voice to?
Wasn't she also the singing voice for Jasmine?
You got
Oh,
it. Yep.
I just guessed that one. I forgot. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, next time just play those songs, like play Reflection and then A Whole New World back to back, and you'll kind of hear it actually.
Okay.
And your last question, what were the ingredients in Mulan's porridge offered by Mushu?
Uh, eggs and bacon, and a cricket.
And
Uh, uh, rice.
there you go, you got it.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's funny. Actually, it's funny you said the cricket because I put that in brackets. I wanted to trick you and be like,
Yeah.
what else is in
Oh,
there that shouldn't be in there?
yeah.
All right, lay on your questions, Mr.
Oh,
Mead.
true or false? This film marked Disney's first ever DVD.
I think I know about this. I think this is true.
You would be correct. And bonus question: when was the DVD for Mulan released?
When was it released? I want to say no, I want to say the year 2000.
You were close. I'll still give you the half a point for the first part of the question, but the DVD, according to what I'm seeing here, the DVD for Mulan was released in November of 1999.
Oh, okay, so just a year later. Okay.
Okay. In the Chinese dub of the film, who voices Shang?
Oh, who voices Shang? I'm gonna go with something really wild and say, was it Bruce Lee?
Sorry. In the Chinese dub of the film, Jackie Chan voices Shang, and
Oh, okay,
not
okay.
only does he provide Shang's Chinese speaking voice, he also sings. I'll make the Chinese version or the Cantonese version of "I'll Make a Man Out of You." And there's even a music video on the DVD where you can watch him, perform martial arts with a bow staff to the song and clips of the movie. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. True or false? Mulan touches her hair a lot simply because one of the animators noticed their daughter touching their hair a lot.
Oh, well, I know that the actress that voiced Mulan, Ming-Na Wen, she was the one who I think I saw a interview with one of the creators saying that the reason why they had Mulan touching her hair a lot was because Ming-Na Wen was touching her hair a lot during their voice recordings.
Ah, you caught on to my trickery.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, I didn't know if it was like both like a situation where the daughter was also doing it, or I don't
No,
know. I just,
the
yeah.
daughter. So you technically got that correct because not only I bullshitted the animator's daughter touching their hair, but that no, it was just the actress who Ming Na Wei touched her hair a lot, so that's why it was such a big part of Mulan's character.
Cool.
Another question. This is also singing related.
Okay.
In the version of the film that we saw, Who is the singing voice of Shang?
Um, it's probably another trick question you're asking me, so I'm gonna say it was still DB Wong.
Actually, no, it wasn't BD Wong. Donny Osmond.
Sorry, BD Wong.
So
That's
yeah,
his
no,
name.
so
Yeah, the guy that
yeah,
played Henry
no,
Wu.
BD
Yeah.
Wong. BD Wong didn't. He did not provide the singing vocals of Shang. The singing vocals of Shang for "I'll Make a Man of You" were performed by Donny Osmond, a grown-up Donny Osmond. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, here's an interesting question for you. Even though the writing is in Chinese, what word is written on the rocket that Mushu straps to his back at the end of the movie?
I don't know, but I'm excited to hear what it is.
It is the Chinese characters on the rocket translate to danger or dangerous because English Chinese characters can mean several different words in English, or they can have several different
Mm.
meanings in English.
Like, actually, it's fun fact about the word Mulan. What it means in Chinese, it's actually translated to flower, wood, orchid,
Yeah,
and it's a play. And when she decides to go by Fa Ping, her soldier's name, it doesn't translate exactly to this word, but it's similar to the word flower pot.
yeah,
So she's going from being a flower to a flower pot, and they thought that was kind of like the in joke.
yeah,
All right, let's do this,
yeah.
shall we? It's pretty short and simple, pretty efficient, I would say, the whole plot of the movie. So we open with the Great Wall of China getting attacked by the villainous Huns, and the Emperor of China gets dispatched from the leader of his soldiers. It's Shang's father. I'm just forgetting his name right now.
General Lee.
General Lee.
Yeah,
Yep. They say that just protect the people. Don't worry about protecting me.
yeah,
Little side thing, like I know that the Huns get a lot of flack in this movie, or especially Sean Yu. While it's not really about the villain, because I think people always compare Sean Yu to like, okay, they're comparing them to like Jafar and Scar and Hades and all the great ones. It's not. This movie is not really. When you look at it, I chalk it off as this movie's about Mulan.
yeah.
And while the villain doesn't really have the amount of the amount of impact that other Disney villains have, they still have quite a menacing
Yeah.
presence. Like they're animated a lot more gothic looking. They just have a very strong, menacing atmosphere around them, and I think it's effective.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about how to talk about Shan Yu before I came on this show, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's unfair that Shan Yu is compared to other villains of the Renaissance era. His presence as a villain works in a different kind of way. I would compare Shan Yu to Shere Khan from the Jungle Book because you see Shere Khan a total of 3 times in the whole movie, and you see Shan Yu about roughly the same, like four, three, or four, maybe 5 times. But the thing is, even though like you actually don't see him do that much, in terms of being an actual threat. So to me, Shan Yu works. He's not like a Scar villain or a Shere Khan villain, or no, he's not like a Scar
Yeah.
villain or a Jafar villain or even a Frollo villain. He's a different kind of villain, and he still works.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And just the fact that also you get to see what he's capable
Yeah,
of throughout the whole movie, the aftermath of his destruction, and all the implications behind him also makes him scary.
yeah.
And then that takes us to our introduction to Mulan, and she's a young girl that's she's trying to present herself as like a potential wife someday.
The what they wanted to portray in Chinese culture is that the women are basically matched with village boys, and they go and carry on the family tree. That's what. So they were trying to set her up to be this perfect porcelain bride, who would be a trophy wife to a great man.
Right.
In an yeah, but as you're about to talk about, it doesn't go her way,
No,
unfortunately.
no. Well, even actually before then, I think this pinnacle moment does a good job at establishing the tone that I was mentioning before, where when Mulan was doing her chores, trying to feed all the chickens, and she straps like that bag with a hole in it to her dog, and it starts running around the yard, and all the chickens are chasing after it. When it just shows that nice, peaceful moment establishing her father as a character of just he's praying to the ancestors that she has a good day meeting the matchmaker, and he doesn't react at all. All these chickens around him eating all the food, and and just in that wide shot, how it's a nice combination of like it's both serious and comedic at the same time, and I think that's the pinnacle moment where you know what movie you're in for.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it didn't. After we get the one out of four songs in this film, the first one of "You'll Bring Honor to Us All." But what I really love is that during the verse, not the, I guess it would be the chorus or the verse of the song, where every time she's going from one place to the other, getting a makeover, it establishes her more as a character. The more and more, it establishes her wit on how she was able to checkmate those two guys playing chess, how she stops this little boy stealing a doll from a little girl. It shows her intelligence, her compassion. It just does a good job at like showing her in between this whole superficial makeover that she's getting.
Yeah, it goes to show that despite the fact that she's being like, forced to conform to the society, she still manages to be like a clever character.
Yeah. And then when her grandmother, and the grandmother's probably one of the more comedic highlights in the film, she gives her a lucky cricket for the occasion. And when she meets the matchmaker, she's really like walking on eggshells with her. And I love how she even puts like a little cheat sheet on her forearm.
Yeah.
Which I think, I don't know. Have you ever done that in school? I've never done it, but
I
I just wanted to.
personally have not, but I actually I haven't I've written stuff on my hand, but I think one time my teacher caught it and before a test and I had to go wash it off. But yeah, no. I think I did that like once, but other than that, yeah, no, I totally can relate to just wanting to have like notes there in front of you, and
Hmm.
that's one of the things that I actually love about Mulan, and I wrote this in my letterbox review when I reviewed Mulan. She's not perfect. Compare her to someone like Belle or Esmeralda. They're not perfect people. Like they make mistakes. They're clumsy. They haven't quite found their footing in life yet. And to me, that makes her more intriguing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Her faults made her more relatable
Yeah,
growing up.
exactly.
And then, yeah, it doesn't turn out too well. It shows that she isn't perfect because the matchmaking meeting does not turn out well. She says the very horrible line, like, you may look like a bride, but you'll never bring your family honor. And that's kind of that low point of showing that our hero is flawed, that
Yeah.
she really wants to not just be who she is on the outside, but who she is on the inside. And that's very heavily reflected, no pun intended, in the song Reflection. That's kind of like her swan song
Yeah.
of the movie, and it's a beautiful scene. It's very beautifully animated, and it's followed up by a really nice scene with her father saying that how he's comparing her to what Mulan means in their culture is that you're just a flower, and one day a flower will bloom into the most beautiful one of them all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's undercutted by Chifu and a few soldiers coming into town saying that they're trying to recruit one man from every single family must recruit into the army to fight off the Huns. And unfortunately, Mulan's father, who's elderly and can't even walk right without a cane, can't even master a sword without feeling like he's going to break his lower back. He decides to recruit himself, and it's a horrible decision. I even like how it's just very subtle and nuanced, even between Mulan's mother and her grandmother, where they're just going along with it. But then Mulan later on at dinner decides to put her foot down and say, "This is a mistake. You should be staying home." He says, "I need to bring honor to all of us and to our country and to our family. And one day you'll understand your honor." And he says it with a lot of anger, and you can tell he immediately regretted saying it.
The way he said it too was very cold. It was like, "I know my place. It is time you learned yours," implying that,
Yeah,
and it kind of harkens. It kind of just two scenes ago he was saying, "Look at this. Look at the blossoms, but this one's late. I'll bet that when it blooms, it will be the most beautiful of all." So when he says, "Hey, I know my place. It's time you learned yours," it kind of undercuts everything he said earlier. It's like, did you really mean
that's the
any of that?
point.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point, is because he's probably so scared and angry himself. The fact that he has to join the army. And he knows that Mulan is right, but he has to do it.
before the big transformation scene, Mulan sits in the in the lap of the statue of the Great Stone Dragon. It's raining. There is no dialogue. There's just beautiful sad music, and
Oh,
uh,
it's incredible.
she
It's a
she
lot of atmosphere in that
yeah.
scene.
Once again, she looks at her reflection in the puddle, and then she looks at the silhouetted window in her house, and you can even see, like, Fa Zhu, that's the name of her father, is comforting
Yep.
Mulan's mother, and Mulan's mother just runs away, like, sobbing, because even she knows it's wrong, but there's nothing she can do to. And then Fa Zhu blows out the candle, and then the silhouette goes dark, and that's when Mulan says,
I
okay.
am so happy you brought up that moment because I was talking about that with Veronica,
Oh, yeah?
where that's kind of a rare moment with Disney films back then where it's telling a story visually.
Yeah.
Like something in the background, something that's kind of building up Mulan's character to make that decision. And it's all done with silhouettes, and you can tell exactly what's going on. Like, kudos to the animators. Like, oh. Then, yeah, Mulan decides I'm going off to war, replacing my father, and I'm cutting my hair, grabbing his armor and sword, and I'm taking off on Khan. Khan? Is that
Khan.
not Ka? Yeah,
Ka is the snake from the Jungle Book. Khan is the horse from Mulan.
right, right. I was going to say, oh, I was going to yell, Khan! And when her father wakes up and realizes that she's gone, he can't do anything about it because if he reveals who she actually is, it's outlawed in their culture that if a woman does this, it's a complete dishonor and she will be punished to death.
Yeah.
It's kind of yeah, and they just have to go along with it. And then we're kind of it's not like and this is what I mean how it doesn't undercut the whole scene. It's just we kind of take a nice little shift to sort of a lighter kind of big chunk, not a big chunk of the movie, but a lighter chunk of the movie where we're established to the ancestors, and it's definitely played for comedy purposes, and I kind of like their role in it where they are watching over her in some sense, but it's definitely a shift from everything that we've seen so far in the film. And we're introduced to Donkey. Or wait, no, not Donkey.
Yeah.
Mushu. Because
Um,
that's all I hear now every time I listen to Eddie Murphy voice Mushu.
do you know, piece of trivia for you, Mushu and Donkey are the only forays with voice acting that Eddie Murphy ever did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's suiting for him because he is a comedic actor that has his voice be sort of like the charging force of his shtick. Because
Yeah.
that's why that terrible movie A Thousand Words failed miserably because the whole premise is that Eddie Murphy can only use 1,000 words or else he'll die. So he has to like rely on physical comedy, which is not his shtick. That's more for like Jim Carrey or Rowan Atkinson.
Right.
But anyways, I digress. So the ancestors decide Mulan needs a guardian angel or a guardian dragon to be with her at all times. And Mushu was thinking, "Oh, I can be the one," but he's kind of like the kind of servant to the ancestors. And when the ancestors decide the Great Stone Dragon should be the protector, Mushu goes to wake him up, but instead completely destroys the statue in all comedic fashions and basically takes the Great Stone Dragon's place on being the guardian to Mulan. I kind of like I've now grown to kind of like who Mushu is, where he's just trying to prove himself, but like he kind of changes his attitude a little bit more throughout the film when he realizes that him and Mulan are kind of in the same position of trying to like prove themselves worthy, even though it's kind of a lie at the same time.
Yeah. Just like Mulan, Mushu's not a perfect character in his station either, because, like, even with that, and it's very fun and it's very hilariously shown in the Ancestors Council, where it's like, you had your chance to protect the Fa family. Your misguidance led Fa Deng to disaster! Yeah, thanks a lot. And the ghost just had his head cut off. So,
He's beheaded. I'm like, what the hell happened to
hey,
him?
do you think Disney Plus will show like a little backstory as to how that happened?
The
Like,
story of Fogane.
like Mushu fucked up. No, they're not gonna call it Mushu fucked up because that's outlawed in Disney. They Mushu done goofed. um,
Mushu Dungu.
I just want to comment on Mushu for a second. Most of the Disney side supporting characters and the Disney side characters on that support the heroes on their quests, they are pretty loyal and, devout friends. Mushu is a selfish bastard. Like, if you really think
Oh,
about
well,
it.
the thing is, like, at the beginning, yes, and it's okay not to like a character at the beginning as long as they go through a transformation and realize the error of their ways. If you want to see Mushu in his purest form of being an asshole, you have to watch the direct-to-video sequel Mulan 2, where the
Um,
whole movie is just, I know it's jumping ahead a bit. Do you remember the scene where he basically manipulates the whole army to basically now get out and go find Shang's father to join with the recruits?
I do
That
remember
whole movie that whole movie of Mulan 2 is that, but it's way more kind of nefarious and kind of out of character,
yeah.
and it makes them more unlikable watching him in the second one. They clearly did not do their homework and try to be in touch with the character that they established in the first one.
Yeah, I have not seen Mulan 2. I refuse to watch Mulan 2 just because I've heard about that. Apparently, I've heard that the biggest problem with the movie is Mushu himself, and not only that, Mushu apparently tries to hijack the narrative of the story. He acts as like the self-proclaimed narrator and tries to make it all about him. And it is for
He
that.
does, yeah.
And it is for that reason that I refuse to watch Mulan 2.
You're not missing much, so don't even bother.
Yeah.
So then as we carry on, Mushu, with the help of the Lucky Cricket, as they're catching up with Mulan, we are showing a little bit more of the threat of the Huns. They captured a few of the soldiers and told them that we're not scared of you guys. Be ready for us. And he lets the two go, and in a very sinister scene, he goes to one of his archer sidekicks. How many men does it take to deliver a message? And then the guy just like gets his bow and arrow ready and he says, "One." And it just cuts to black. And I'm like, yes, again, it's all about the implications of a villain. And while right before Mulan decides to join the camp, Mushu joins joins up with Mulan in very hilarious fashions and acts like a giant mythical, almost like a Wizard of Oz reference. But then it becomes like that man behind the curtain cut to
Yeah.
reality of it's not a giant figure dragon, it's just a tiny little lizard.
Hey, dragon, not lizard. I don't do that tongue thing.
There you go. I wanted you to correct me on that.
Um, do you know why that sequence was put in the movie? Because when they were conceptualizing Mulan, they knew that they wanted to have a mythical element to it, but when the storyboard animators depicted a dragon being Mulan's sidekick, Disney was really skeptical and they vetoed Mushu entirely from the story because apparently if Mulan had a big dragon sidekick, it would not be it would be he would be too intimidating and he would be too scary, he would be too threatening. But one of the artists who was very familiar with Chinese culture said that in Chinese lore, dragons can come in all shapes and sizes. That's why the line of course, I'm travel size for your convenience. If I was my real size, your cow here would die of fright. If that's the reason that line exists, just to show that
Ah,
dragons in Chinese folklore come in all shapes and sizes, and it works perfectly for the adventure because Mushu needs to be so small that he can hide himself, and that was
yeah. And
perfect.
and 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 you know what? Kudos to the animators for actually going to China and sketching out concept art and actually trying to like mimic the culture accurately as they possibly can. It really does show that they're not doing what their previous generation did in the 1950s with certain Disney movies on just portraying cultural differences without really doing their homework. And as we all know, a lot of stuff back then hasn't really aged that well.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Peter Pan.
Oh God. Hey, Pocahontas would make up for it, right?
Oh God! Okay, then
Right.
maybe I take back. Disney can fuck up. Disney succeeds and fucks up all the time, just like any other movie studio.
Yeah.
And then as Mulan joins the army, she's surrounded by a lot of disgusting men picking their nose, getting the gunk under their nails, and a lot of just ruffian guys. And then we're introduced to the trio of Yao, Ling, and Genpo.
Yeah.
Three completely different characters, very unique in their own way. I love how one is like a ladies' man, one is like an aggressive type, and the other one's a pacifist.
Yeah. He's
Like,
the gentle giant is a pacifist. That's great.
yeah. Oh, shout out to my mom. I loved the character of Jen Po so much as a kid that I went through a period where I can only be referred to being called his name.
Shen,
So my
you could
mom,
only
my mom, my mom would be calling my name, Cody, Cody. Ugh, Genpo. Yes, mom.
Genpo, that's so funny. I would also like to give a shout out to Cody's mom because through the actions of you not letting him go see Mulan because he had to clean his room, I think it's safe to say that you made a man out of him.
Yeah, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Well, then, yeah. Before we get to that song, so it's established that Mulan is not fitting in well. She goes by the name Ping, and
yeah.
when she's introduced to Shang, the commander of this unit, I love how Shang, I've appreciated Shang a lot more growing up in terms of how his role is portrayed because at first he feels like almost like an eager kid joining the army, and he is talking behind, to himself like, "Wow, I'm going to be the greatest commander of an army of all time." He steps outside and like everyone's just beating the shit out of each other. And he has to basically put on his boss persona or his work persona because that's not who he is as a person. And then when again, yeah, Mulan is not fitting in well during the training sequence where all the characters are faced with a great task of retrieving an arrow that's up on a pole way up high, and that's when we're introduced to the song, our favorite song from the movie, "Make a Man Out of You." And as we said before, there's just a really great arc to it where it just goes from all the soldiers not treating Ping as one of them, and then by the end she's proven herself worthy. Like, she does not give up.
Yeah, I like how she ties the discs together.
Yeah, she ties the two anchors together. She just finds like a unique way to try to get up there.
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of little funny parts in the movie. Like when I think all of us have thought of this, even if we're at a carnival, we're trying to like hit the dart on the little trading card, but they're trying to hit all the arrows on the tomatoes. But Mushu put like a tomato on the arrow, and Shang catches her in the act, and she just does that hilarious. She does that hilarious smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cut for comedy, but it's also cut for trying to progress her character. It's probably one of the best montages I've ever seen.
I would have to agree, and it's up like I was said in my little breakdown of the song and how it shows change rather than talks about change. That's up there with "Poor Unfortunate Souls" and "Let It Go" from Frozen. Is just a song that's both sounds amazing, and it also shows change without talking about change directly, like while the
Yeah,
song's going on. That's so yeah, those three songs are very powerful like change agents to me. And also I have to give a shout out to Lyle because Lyle contextualized this song in a way that I've never heard it contextualized. He called "I'll Make a Man Out of You" the Eye of the Tiger of Disney songs because if you've seen Rocky 3, you'll know that
yeah,
Eye of the
yeah.
Tiger
That's a good
is
comparison.
yeah, Eye of the Tiger in that movie is the ultimate like training montage song, and I'll Make a Man Out of You has gone down in the Disney, community as like the ultimate motivational song.
No, I agree with that. That's a good comparison actually.
Yeah.
And then as we're keep cutting back to the Huns deciding to shift their focus to another village on their way to the Emperor, we're shown Mulan trying to take a bath for the first time, and I like how we need to see like a scene where she's showing some sort of vulnerability, and it's undercutted by her getting company by the three guys from before. Yao Ling and Chen Po finally nicely introducing themselves to her really nicely, but it is very uncomfortable because she's surrounded by a lot of naked men, and she wanted to have some me time for the first time being there. And I just love how when she's so bashful, she's like, instead of just like, playing around, why don't we just close our eyes and just swim around? And I
Yeah.
like how right before Wang was supposed to say, "Come on, don't be such a girl." I like how he was about to say girl, but it was undercutted
Yeah.
with Mushu biting him right in the butt.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to him brushing his teeth. And then she's like, "I never want to see a naked man again." As like a herd of soldiers run by her naked.
Oh god.
So Mushu decides, okay, we really need to get Mulan into the war finally. So he writes a fake note. He's posing as General Lee to send it to his son, Shang, that we need you guys in the front lines. And we are on our very last song of the movie, A Girl Worth Fighting For. And okay, why don't we just mention this movie really quickly? And okay, The Mulan remake. Okay, let's just bring it up
Oh,
now
we're
because I don't want
going
to. I don't
there
want to.
now?
I don't want to bring it up later. So let's just like get into this. I was
Sure.
actually looking, despite the fact that I think that the current landscape of Disney remakes have just been a complete waste of time and a waste of money. I was actually looking forward to the Mulan remake under two conditions. One, that it was going to take itself more seriously, and two, that there wasn't going to be any songs. So I thought it was going to be, hey, cool, kind of like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of movie, and it was going to be like a mythical movie that they probably would finally get it right. And when I thought they were not going to have any songs in it, after watching the movie with you recently, I now know why they didn't want any of those songs, because you have two songs that are very masculine and have a certain place at a certain time in the movie. You know, like these soldiers, Yao, Lang, and Chen Po, are supposed to be like that at the beginning, kind of looking down on women, saying that, like, you know, oh, I'll be superior to you. It doesn't matter who you are. But they go through a transformation through the movie, and they realize that, wow, if Ping turns out to be Mulan, this fierce person, and it doesn't matter what gender you are, it's showing that they've grown as a character. But from the very beginning, in the remake, when she joins the army, they're just so friendly to her, and there's like no conflict. There's nothing, no obstacles put in Mulan's way. The whole movie glosses over all the iconic moments of the original, and I think I joked and said, well, wow, so she can't bring honor to her family or to her country or to herself, but she's still so powerful. She can do anything. Nothing's wrong with her.
Yeah.
And it's like this bullshit politically correct kind of way of establishing her character, and it was a complete disappointment to me.
Yeah, you know what? Like, making Mulan perfect misses the point of the original movie and what it was about. And by the way, like, I agree with the whole, the way they portrayed the guys in the army. They instead of having them, not get along with her at first, she is a bitch to them for no reason.
Yeah, the whole dynamic is kind of in reverse, and it didn't make
Yeah.
any sense to me. Yeah, it's that because I wanted to bring that up just because they probably did not want to include the songs because they're like, no, it needs to be safe. It needs to be, men are down there and female empowerment is up here. And it doesn't matter. It matters of the person. And that's what the whole point of the fucking original movie was about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
their correctness undercutted the whole point of the first movie, which makes these remakes are gonna date so horribly. Only remake the ones that didn't do well, like remake the Black Cauldron, remake Atlantis, remake Treasure Planet. Those are the ones I'll see.
Okay, granted, I'm curious to see what they do with Hunchback of Notre Dame, which apparently is getting a remake. I will not see a remake of Lilo and Stitch. I will check out Atlantis and I'll check out Treasure Planet if they ever remake those. But other than that,
God, imagine seeing a live action Stitch. Like it's gonna be like Sonic the Hedgehog all over again. Like
well,
it's gonna be terrifying until they try to Disneyfy it, but it's
oh
still gonna
god.
look terrifying.
If there's any Disney execs listening to this, just don't make Stitch too disgusting if you're even going to remake this movie at all, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
agree.
yeah, so enough with all that. Let's go back to,
Yeah,
because we're now getting to like the real third act of Mulan, which in my
yeah.
opinion is one of the it actually Mulan has one of the best third acts of any Disney movie I've seen in ages.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. So yeah, as we said before, when they're singing their very last song, it's undercutted by a village in ruins. And it's sort of like the weight of the world is being dropped on these soldiers. It kind of reminds me of what happened to the kids in Stand By Me, where at first they were like, "Oh, it's going to be so exciting to go see a dead body. We're going to be famous." But until they come face to face with a dead person, they realize that it's not just about us, it's about the tragedy, you know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those amazing moments where like General Shang finds his father's helmet, and it's beautifully kind of like a nice little memorial scene where he puts his father's sword and then his father's helmet on top of the sword, and then Mulan puts that doll of that little girl that was established at the beginning. And it's another one of those situations where you're like, the Huns are so villainous. Like they implied that children have died as well. Like I
That's
mean,
dark.
it's one thing to like see, like for Simba to see like his father dead in front of him, but the fact that you are aware that in the context of this movie that children have been slaughtered is
Can, can I be honest?
horrifying.
Can I be honest with you? Like when I was a kid, my gullible like the scene that establishes the doll where Shan Yu finds Shan Yu's falcon swoops down and grabs the doll from the village, and Shan Yu uses it to track where the village is and where it comes from.
Like he smells it. Yeah, yeah.
And then he says right before they're about to depart, besides, the little girl will be missing your doll. We should return it to her. My gullible 6-year-old ass was like, oh, they're actually going to do something kind of nice. And then I see the doll a couple minutes later. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as they leave, they're all quiet. I love that. They're just all quiet. And then we're kind of back. We ease our way back into some comedic fashion where Mushu accidentally fired off a rocket and gave away their position. But it takes us to a pretty fucking epic battle scene where they're shooting the rockets all up on the mountain, trying to take down all the Huns that are archers. And when they are holding on to their very last cannon, they see past the smoke Shan Yu just on the mountain top, and then right behind him, all of his Huns rise above the cliff, and then they charge down the mountain. It's like a scene I've literally rewound so many times. Just the
Yeah.
epicness of the grand scale. It's just every single Hun on their horse looked like they were so detailed. It wasn't just like a mirror this shot here or mirror this chunk of soldiers here. It's like they all feel so detailed
Yeah.
when it punches in on a few shots of them just charging and going ah.
Okay. I don't think we saw an epic charge like that again in a movie until maybe 2003 when Lord of the Rings Return of the King, the Riders of Rohan come to the aid of Gondor.
I know that a couple years before Mulan, there was Braveheart that had actually quite a few charging scenes that were pretty memorable and epic, and they felt like
Right.
there
That's
was a lot
true.
of weight on it.
I'm talking like,
Um,
but after Mulan, it would be a couple years before you saw another charge like that in a movie
that's
again.
true. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, yeah.
Like, not even
And
Star
then
Wars could get that well.
you can only have that opportunity for a charge scene with like a lightsaber fight. It's a little bit harder with like laser blasters and all that.
Yeah.
But that yeah, then Mulan comes up with something clever by looking at a mountain nearby and causing an avalanche with the last rocket, and it wipes out 99.9% of the Huns. She's injured throughout the battle, and when it's revealed later on that when she was injured, she's also a woman, Chifu was like, "Well, Captain Shang, you know what to do." He takes out his sword, and even though Mulan just very previously saved Shang, and he said, "I owe you a lot, Ping, for this, like a life debt," it makes sense for him not to do what he was supposed to do. But he's so discouraged too. Like the lie was definitely something that impacted the whole army, I would say.
The lie was a sledgehammer to the face for them.
Yeah.
Because one of the things the movie likes to stress is that honor is integral to ancient Chinese culture and even to this day in current Chinese culture. So, unfortunately, when they just destroyed an army, their victory was felt hollowed out. Like, and you can
hmm
even see that on their faces in the scene you're about to talk about next. Like, they feel like their victory isn't earned.
When they're in the parade, like you can even see it. Like Chifu is just, I mean, he's like a slimy assistant to the emperor. He's just like all happy, we're all getting applauded, and then it just cuts to like just Shang, Yao, Ling, Zhenpo, all the soldiers, and they're all just like stone faced,
Yeah.
disappointed. Like they feel like even despite the fact that we at that point they thought that they defeated the Huns, we feel like we not only lost like a true friend and this friend should be here, but it also probably all changed their perception on it. It doesn't matter a gender. It
Yeah.
matters of the person.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and Mulan has a really nice. I mean, she's definitely hit a low point here of just saying, "I don't see anything anymore. I've all I wanted to see was my inner reflection, but I don't see anything." And it was really nice what Mushu said of just saying how I'm more of a fraud than you are. You came here with the best intentions. I came here just for myself and to prove my own
Yeah.
self-worthy when really I'm nothing.
Yeah.
But you're my friend and we're still going to get through this no matter what. And it's like That's nice. I like you, Mushu.
Before you talk about the next scene, there's something I'd like to point out that's been going on in the background, not in the foreground, but in the background of this movie. And it
Oh, sure.
started when she joined the army.
Yeah.
She might be catching feelings for Shang, and this scene is made very clear because without any dialogue, which is great visual storytelling again that this movie does very well. When it's established that she has a cut in her chest and she has to go to the medic's tent, the medic comes out of the tent, takes Shang aside and whispers something in her ear. Shang goes into the tent. Mushu sees what's going on and he looks horrified, like, oh no. And then as soon as Mulan wakes up and sees Shang, it's almost like she forgets that she's pretending to be a boy because she wakes up and, kind of gazes at him the way, you would look at your crush if they walked into the room to see you waking up. When Shang sees her chest bandage, and she sees, the breasts that are bandaged, and then Mulan pulls the blanket up, realizing that she forgot that she was pretending to be a boy. She goes, I can explain. And that's when her secret's blown. So that they were going to find out either way, but how they found out revealed a lot about what was going on with Mulan in the background.
It's nice to watch it in the sense of an adult because I don't know about you, but as a kid, I kind of didn't understand that moment, but they did a really good job at trying to get the information shown that her cover's blown, but without being so revealing.
Yeah,
Because it took me a while to pick up on the fact that they were trying to show something subtle, the fact that like he's noticing that she has breasts
yeah.
and it's a very nice subtle touch. Of course, they had to ruin that in the remake where she just up front tells them all, I'm a woman.
Oh god.
Like,
That
what the
again,
fuck?
they missed the point of the original movie that they're trying to remake.
It's like anytime we have to make a
Dishonor.
joke, yeah,
Dishonor. Dis
dishonor this movie.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bury this in the snow. And if you
Yeah.
happen to be looking out for Mulan, like Mulan, and you lift it up and it's the remake, nope.
I like that.
Oh yeah, that speaking of that little moment, that's like a moment my mom howls with laughter.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
picks up the head of one random Hun.
Yeah.
Nope, never mind.
My dad really liked that scene too. It was really funny.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the mark of good family movies is when there's enough comedy for both kids and adults and enough drama as well.
Now,
And then right
speaking of
before Mulan
drama,
was yes, yeah, right before Mulan was about to pack up and go home because she's through. No, the Shan Yu and a few of the Huns pop out of the snow like daisies,
yeah.
and they make their way to the Empress Palace, and she thinks this is my chance to redeem myself, and she does that. She goes into the city, and then when the army is getting saluted, the Falcon of Shan Yu picks up the sword of Shan Yu, brings it back to him, and the rest of the Huns capture the Emperor, and they're in the palace. And what I like here is that it's showing that the characters have now all grown because it's sort of a combination of being a soldier, but also Mulan's sort of charm and wit comes into play with everything kind of calling back with the matchmaker makeup and all the fruit. Sort of
Yeah.
how it comes back in a very clever way. They defeat a few of the Shan Yu's henchmen. They finally get to the Emperor. They save the Emperor, but then it's face to face with just Mulan and Shan Yu. And I think I said before where it's kind of funny how in the Disney Renaissance it didn't seem like a lot of our heroes would intentionally go out to kill the main villain. It's just trying to stop them.
Yeah.
And here you can almost pin it on Mushu being the absolute murderer in this movie because when Mulan just defends her position and just pins Shan Yu to the roof, Mushu is the one that launched the rocket.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Mulan did stop him, so that still kind of carries out where our main character isn't out for blood. But you know what? Mushu is like this mythical dragon, whatever. You can almost chuck it off. And he goes out with a bang. Shang Yu definitely goes out with a bang.
So do you think Mushu is on the same level as Milo for just straight up murdering Shan Yu?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think Mushu is a little bit more cold-hearted because, like, maybe Milo Thatch, you can almost chuck it off like he was just trying to defend himself. No, Mushu, like, like had the rocket ready. Light me. I'm aiming right at my peripherals. Him.
Yeah.
And then, oh god, I kind of hate the fact that the TV spots ruin the speech with the Emperor
Oh, they do?
because Oh yeah, I mean, no, you don't remember that growing up. It's just like you
Yes.
hear that whole thing growing up. It's like you think that the Emperor's gonna chew Mulan up. Like, I've heard a great deal about you, Fa Mulan. You stole your father's armor, ran away from home, impersonated a soldier, defiled my army, destroyed my palace, and you have saved us all. And apparently in Chinese culture, apparently this movie got a lot of backlash for the Emperor bowing to Mulan.
Oh, really? That I guess
Yeah,
that
and
would make sense.
that and hugging the hugging the emperor was also a thing that they would never do. But I think the movie was also self-aware about that because I think Yao said immediately after, "Is she allowed to do that?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that in of itself has the perfect balance of love and humor.
Well, one thing is just like in a pinnacle scene, she brings honor to her whole country in that amazing shot where everyone just bows down to her, and she's going to be bringing honor to her family. But when she returns to her father, he doesn't care the fact about all this materialistic things. It's like you have brought an honor to us,
Yeah.
and she's also ultimately brought honor to herself. She's proven herself worthy. It's satisfying. It's a very satisfying arc.
Also, do you remember that we talked about this on an episode of So to Speak where we were talking about Lord of the Rings? Do you remember in the big crowning scene where Aragorn becomes king
Oh,
and he goes,
yes.
"My
You
friend."
bow to no one.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you bow to no one. That was a very powerful moment, and that was the first time since Mulan that I had seen like a big tribute and honor, like in terms of bowing to someone, like be done really well.
hmm
Yeah,
And just another note, the fact that this movie was so sly and it made a right choice to not introduce some sort of it implied at some sort of romance at the end, but really the only piece of love that Mulan gets out of the end from like romantically from Shang is you fight good.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
he's
it's kind of implied, sure, that he comes for, for dinner and, he's trying to get a little closer, but it's like we don't need to see that. I mean, it's kind of explored a bit more in Mulan 2. You don't really need to bother with that one.
yeah,
But you can almost just have your own sort of possibilities of where they end off on.
yeah.
But the whole point of the movie was already fulfilled at that point, and yeah, it ends on a very funny note with the grandmother just admiring Shang. Oh, sign me up for the next war. And when she's like, Mulan's like, "Would you like to stay for dinner, Shang?" And you just hear her in the background, "Would you like to stay forever?" It's hilarious.
the embarrassing family.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah,
And even Mushu gets a little bit of honor at the end, which is kind of nice.
albeit begrudgingly.
Yeah, begrudgingly. And yeah, I don't particularly, I mean, I love Stevie Wonder, but ending it off with a song like that is kind of a strange, odd choice. But yeah, it's a light movie. You want to
It's
leave everybody
true to your
leaving with a
heart.
head bopping song, but
True to your heart. Do you know what? That the reason I feel like that was thrown in was because what Disney did in the credits of their songs was they would end a their movie with a pop song that doesn't really fit the tone of the movie you just watched, but it's in your head so that you'll go buy the soundtrack once you leave the theater. So they did that with they've done it well, like with Aladdin they had Peeble Bryson sing. Did I say PB Bryson or Peeble Bryson sing a whole new world in the credits of Aladdin? In the credits of The Lion King, Elton John sings a beautiful version of "Can You Feel the Love Tonight," which I actually think that version is better than the version we heard in the movie. Also, Tarzan ended with Phil Collins just doing more Phil Collins songs. But also, The Emperor's New Groove ended with Sting singing "My Funny Friend and Me," which is one of my favorite Disney songs ever made. Quite honestly.
I think if I had to make one critique about Mulan is just that I personally just felt like ending it off with the pop song, like even during the context of the movie, because it feels like all the spirits are partying to that song. I
Yeah,
kind of would have liked it if it ended off with some sort of bittersweet score with Mulan, and maybe with just like a pulling out shot of her on a cliff or something, and then maybe throw in something in the background that Mushu was up to, but just and then ended off with like a nice rendition of Christina Aguilera's Reflection would have been nice.
yeah,
But it's honestly, but that's my one gripe in the last, what, 20, 30 seconds of the movie. So it
yeah.
kind of doesn't matter.
Speaking of Christina Aguilera, I didn't know this, but that movie launched her career as a singer.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like because Christina Aguilera didn't make waves until the early 2000s, and Mulan helped start. Was the little Mulan was that little pebble in the pond that started the ripple effect that would lead to her
Yeah.
career.
And that was Mulan. Any final thoughts you have on it? And you can almost, and you know what? I know that we're in sort of a, oh, it's like an elephant in the room that just won't go away with that live action remake. If you wanted to bring up a few more points about it to compare
Um,
how masterfully done the original was, but like I'd love to hear just your ultimate final points on this. Like, what's the first thing you think of when you hear Mulan?
well, the first thing I think of when I hear Mulan is I think of female heroism done right. It's not about the gender of the person, it's their actions that matter. And the whole movie plays on, gender stereotypes, and it does it a lot more cleverly than that remake did. There's also something that before we did this recording, I thought about saying it at the beginning, but I feel like it's appropriate to say it now for this reason. I was a little nervous about because, Cody, you and I, we're two white kids who were born and raised in Canada, and we are essentially mansplaining Mulan. But and I think of like the Brie Larsons of the world when they say we're sick of hearing old white men write critical reviews of movies that aren't made for them. It's like, well, first of all, I can see where Brie's coming from, but at the same time, it's like you're missing the point. Like movies are made. I get that you want to see diversity with the people criticizing films and discussing films, but here's the thing: like Mulan was marketed for everyone. Like Disney has always marketed their movies for multiple different cultures. How they portray said culture is a little questionable, granted,
Yeah.
but the reality is like if two kids in Canada can have a movie about a legend that takes place in China be one of their all-time favorite childhood staples, then not only have you done your job with introducing, kids from another culture to another culture, but you're actually creating diversity. You're not capitalizing on the culture, you're portraying it in my opinion well. So done. And just to go back to something, remember how you said the matchmaker, snarls at Mulan, says, "You may look like a bride, but you'll never bring your family honor." It reminded me of a scene in the opening of Aladdin. When do you remember when Prince Ahmed is pompously riding up to the palace gates, and then the prince shoves Aladdin out of the way, and then Aladdin says, "Hey, look at that, Abu! It's not every day you see a horse with two rear ends." The prince looks at him with a disgusted demeanor on his face that says, "You are a worthless street rat. You were born a street rat, you'll die a street rat, and only your fleas will mourn you." That was a very hurtful scene for me to watch. But I thought of Mulan when I saw this because it is not Aladdin's fault that we can see that he is a street rat. He is not a street rat by his own mistakes. That just is the way he is. Mulan fucked up that meeting with the matchmaker. So the fact that she fucked up and got said something, you'll never be able to bring your family honor because you won't be a good wife, just because one meeting with a matchmaker didn't go so well. Granted, she almost burned the place down, but yeah, yeah, that's really like all I wanted to say. And also, I brought up this point earlier in the talk. As far as Disney movies go in general, and with the Renaissance era, this movie doesn't have that many songs. Like I'll give to put this into context, Aladdin has 7 songs, Lion King has 5 songs, and Mulan comes in with 4 songs. And that's abnormally low for a Disney movie. And not only, and to give some even more context to that, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree was a half-hour featurette made in the 1960s. That little short managed to have 5 songs. So
Wow, one
I think
more.
I find that really funny.
I think that it kind of goes to show that they were putting story before following that Disney formula.
Yeah, and by the way, like none of the songs feel out of place, and I think the fact that they cut the song "A Girl Worth Fighting For" short to show the reality of the situation, I thought that was brilliant because it shows that this movie is not its songs. This movie is a very real situation, and it needs to be taken seriously.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
one last thing I do want to say about the remake. When I saw the trailers for the remake, I had just gotten over how annoyed I was with the Lion King clone. I refused to call that a remake because it wasn't a remake; it was a clone. I was so annoyed with the fact that the Lion King didn't do anything new and just capitalized on what was there before, because in my opinion, the two Disney live action remakes that I really like a lot are Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella and Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book. I like those because they took what was done before and they made it new and they made it fresh and they innovated. That's what a remake is supposed to do. Regardless of whether or not you like the final product of Cinderella or The Jungle Book, they remakes tried to be different. I thought, and then I saw Beauty and the Beast, and then I saw Lion King, and I'm like, these remakes aren't remakes; they're clones. Like they're not even. And Aladdin had a similar problem. So when I saw that Mulan was going to be different, I thought, okay, I hope different is good. Different wasn't enough. They made it different, sure, but they completely missed the point of everything this movie established. That's really all I have to say. I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna add in the only Disney live action remake that I think is the best one, and it was one that was ahead of its time, was the 101 Dalmatians remake from the 90s.
Ah, yes. People.
Because that turns like everything on it makes it a little bit more realistic. The dogs don't talk. Roger and Anita both have modern professions. I love the idea of her working for Cruella DeVille in that movie, of being like a fashion designer.
Yeah.
I mean it definitely, because it's produced and written by John Hughes, it definitely has like a bit of like Home Alone slapstick to it, but I do like it because first of all, Glenn Close hamming it up is just so entertaining to watch,
Yeah.
but it was a remake that was doing things differently, but still having that spirit of the original, which
Yeah.
I don't know. These modern ones just completely fall flat for me most of the time.
I have not seen the remake of 101 Dalmatians in a long time, but I am due for a rewatch, so I'd be happy
Oh,
to
for
revisit
sure.
it sometime.
I think you should.
Yeah.
My final thoughts on Mulan. I don't want to repeat myself a little too much, but it's definitely one of those first movies that helped me understand the universal archetype of the hero's journey. And like you kind of said, like the fact that like it's a completely different gender, completely different culture, I just became infatuated with the character. And it's another one of those movies like with The Lion King, of just helping me understand character driven stories that have a little bit more cinematic choices to it. And it just wasn't a movie that had that sort of cutesy Disney vibe to it. It felt a little bit more matured. It felt one that kind of stood out amongst all the ones that I was growing up with. And I think it'll always have a place in my heart. It has a perfect running time. It's a perfectly paced film. I think the tone is right on point. I look forward to rewatching it with my kids one day. It's definitely something that I would love to sit down and show them and
Yeah.
just watch their faces. Yeah, it's up there for sure. I think my top three Disney films would have to be The Lion King, Mulan, and a Goofy movie. I have a very obscured choice for a third one, but I think that one is sickeningly underrated. But hopefully I'll get to that one day.
I really like the fact that you point that out about a Goofy movie because Disney released two hand-drawn animated movies while the Renaissance era was going on. The Rescuers Down Under and a Goofy movie, and both of those movies have attained cult status.
Yep, yeah, for sure.
Ironically, I watched an extremely goofy movie, the direct-to-video sequel, more so than a Goofy movie. But there is a charm to a Goofy movie.
Hmm.
We'll have to get to that some other day. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that leads us to the end of this episode. I had a lot of fun really deep diving into not only just Mulan, but it feels like we tackled Disney. Just the
yeah.
whole kind of like face of it, and just yeah, you seem to be very knowledgeable when it comes to this property of movies, and you seem like the obvious choice to come back.
Let me at the Lion King whenever you're ready.
Oh,
'Cause-
for sure. You're 100% there. Absolutely.
okay, great.
Thank you again, Evan. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to hearing your voice again or seeing you in person. I'd love to hear you talk about a film we either equally love or equally hate,
Oh, equally.
which is kind of like what we did today, the original and the remake. But so, wow, that's a first on Pop Talk.
Yeah.
Again, everybody, click a like, leave a comment, and most likely subscribe to So to Speak and check out their content there. And I will see you on the next one.
Come back for more Pop Talk, guys. It's taking off.
And I hope all your reflections show who you are.
Inside. Take care, guys.